Welcome everybody. I see familiar faces and some new ones too. My name is Michael Brown. I'm the relatively new Associate Curator of European Art here at the San Diego Museum of Art, and today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite paintings in the collection, the still life behind me by Juan Sanchez Cotan. He was a Spanish painter, and this particular painting was done in about 1602, and that puts it roughly in the same time period as El Greco. We have two El Grecos that are out on loan currently, but usually one lives right there and the other one right here. But this painter was a contemporary of both El Greco and also an artist and scholar that you may not have heard of before, whose name is Francisco Pacheco. Pacheco is best known as the father-in-law and teacher of Diego Velázquez, one of the greatest painters of all time, who was born and trained in Seville in Spain. So Sanchez Cotan, the artist of this work, worked in Toledo, which was one of the artistic centers in Spain, and also one of the leading centers of the church, the Catholic Church in Spain. So there was a very active, healthy art patronage tradition in Toledo. And we know that eventually this painting was owned by the Archbishop of Toledo. But I'll get into the history of the provenance of the painting a little bit later. First, I want to give everybody a chance to actually look at what's going on in this picture. It's oil on canvas, and it depicts essentially this windowsill or cubby, which was a feature of Spanish houses at the time, and it served as a storage place, a safe storage place, a cool storage place for food. And we know that in 1603, the year after this painting was executed, we know that the artist actually joined a monastery. And so this has led some art historians, mistakenly I think, to talk about this painting regarding any sort of vow of poverty on the part of the artist. In reality, when we look a little closer at the painting, we see at the center this open melon. It's been cut and prepared for consumption. In fact, there's already a piece or two missing. So we know someone has been actively here in our space consuming this really luscious melon. I don't see anything relating to a vow of poverty in this delicious, sumptuous depiction of the cantaloupe at the center of the painting. Now, interestingly, and before we move on, I want to also point out the cucumber and how the cucumber actually protrudes beyond the imaginary picture plane, which would be this space right here. It's protruding into our space. So the cucumber, the artist depicts the cucumber foreshortened and with a very specific light source and shadow, and brings this object into the viewer's space. So there is a connection between the viewer and the objects in this two-dimensional painting. What the artist has done is break down the two-dimensional quality of the painting, in fact making it three-dimensional and involving the viewer. So what appears to be a very simple composition is actually quite complex, and it is an example of very sophisticated illusion that became popular right around this time. Sanchez Cotan was among the earliest of still life painters in Spain, and this particular painting happens to be perhaps the finest example of still life painting of the 17th century. We know that Francisco Pacheco, Velázquez's teacher, really admired this work and others by Sanchez Cotan. And I've always imagined Pacheco encouraging his son-in-law, Velázquez, to look at Sanchez-Cotan and the naturalism and the illusionism and the use of space and the breakdown of space. And we see that Velázquez indeed was very interested in this type of illusion and also this type of breaking down the barrier between the two-dimensional world and the three-dimensional world that we all exist in. And the key in this work is the cucumber breaking the picture plane. Another more subtle.
The melon is over the edge.
Yes, the slice of melon also hangs over the edge of the windowsill, again creating the illusion that it is coming into our space. This is something that we find in works by Caravaggio in Italy, and indeed the still life tradition did originate in Italy. This is among the earliest Spanish examples and easily the best known of all Spanish still lifes. If you open a standard textbook on art history, chances are this will be used as the example for Spanish still life in textbooks. And in fact, just to give you a little personal anecdote, 20 years ago when I was taking my first university course, a lecture course on the Southern Baroque, which included Italy, France, and Spain, I saw a slide of this painting. And I had been slowly developing an interest in Spanish painting, but this painting really led me to continue my studies, and so it was a very happy coincidence when I ended up here in San Diego visiting an old friend, and now I'm taking care of this old friend. So, so we have a history of our own, I could say. But to look closer at the painting, and I encourage you all to approach the painting when I'm finished, to really look as close as you can, because I want to focus on these two objects here, the quince and the cabbage. The quince and the cabbage have been arranged rather curiously. They're hanging from twine, but we can't see where the twines are anchored. If we look at the light source and the lack of shadow here, and a strong light source coming from the left on the cabbage, there is no shadow cast by either of these objects in the lower portion of the picture. This is an indication very clearly that the anchors for the two twines are actually in front of this, this windowsill, the window ledge. So these two objects are hanging in our space. That is the illusion that the artist is conveying here. And not only are these two objects hanging in our space, so by doing this, the artist is inviting us to reach out and touch them. The two objects are actually in motion. Now, of course, this is a painting, painted in 1602. The paint has long dried. The objects are not really moving. However, the artist conveys this illusion of motion by very, very subtly making these two twines not hang parallel, but rather they're tapered in towards the bottom. So now the only way that they would not hang parallel is if they were slightly moving, very slightly moving back and forth, and they are tapered. The twine tapers down towards the bottom, suggesting that either a breeze has made the objects move, or that whoever has occupied this space and cut the melon and sampled the melon has also just hung the quince and the cabbage. Now this is a kind of visual game of incredible sophistication, and Toledo being an intellectual and religious capital of Spain, this kind of intellectual game would have found a very welcome audience. And indeed, we know that as I mentioned, the Archbishop owned this painting. Now, who else owned the painting? Because Like many objects in our gallery, in fact all of them, all of these paintings and sculptures have stories of their own to tell. What happened to this painting? Well, in the early 19th century, during a period known as the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon installed his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, as King of Spain. And he was known by the Spanish especially as the Intruder King. With the defeat of his brother by the Duke of Wellington, Joseph Bonaparte's hold on the throne in Spain got pretty shaky. And in fact, by 1815, he was on the move. In fact, much earlier than that. By 1813, he had left Spain and was no longer, the rebelling Spanish forces had evicted him essentially, but he left with 1,500 cartloads of cultural booty from Spanish collections. He had collected paintings and furniture and all sorts of stuff, and eventually he made his way through France and on to the United States by 1815. And
all of his stuff?
With a small portion of the initial haul that he had brought out of Spain. So in the end, he had about 250 paintings, one of which is documented as this painting. Now Joseph Bonaparte ends up moving to southern New Jersey, where he builds a mansion and lives under the assumed name of the Count of Surveillet, if you can believe that. So his house, which was destroyed by fire but then rebuilt and is now a museum, Breezy Point, is just north of Philadelphia. And this painting was exhibited at the Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia in 1816 and 1818. And then it was sold, presumably sold either by Joseph Bonaparte or his daughter, who lived as well at this mansion in southern New Jersey, to an American collector whose family had lived in Spain throughout the Napoleonic Wars, and the Meade family. And so this painting passed from Bonaparte to Meade, and we actually have another painting in the collection that's not on view right now that was also owned by Mrs. Meade. But we do know that this very painting was exhibited at the Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia at precisely the same time that still life starts becoming popular among American painters. And in our collection here at the San Diego Museum of Art, we have two examples by Raphael Peale, whose still life paintings were exhibited at the Academy at the same time as this one. So we have very strong connection to Spanish painting going back to the very early 19th century here in the United States, and it's so appropriate that this painting then eventually, through the Putnam sisters, came to the San Diego Museum of Art, where it remains one of our most popular and most important paintings. Certainly one of our most important Spanish paintings, but really among the collection, it's one of our superstars, and it's a treat for me to be able to share a few of the stories behind this work of art. And I'll take questions from, yes, go right ahead.
You mentioned when Joseph Bonaparte was leaving Spain, he had 1,500 cartloads of, you used the term collected works. Were they collected or stolen?
Well, some were confiscated, and some were bought, but for the most part, there was a real campaign of confiscation from from monasteries. And now, of course, this is also the time that the monasteries, the Roman Catholic monasteries, had been dissolved during the Napoleonic Wars, and so they divested a lot of material, but a lot of it was confiscated as well. So it does sometimes get a bit complicated, the distinction between how exactly these things got into Joseph Bonaparte's collection. But yes, confiscation was a huge part of
Those
it.
were families too.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I would say I see the leaf in front of the other stream,
Yes.
and I know they're hung out there. I see really formality in the arrangement, but it's the choice of the objects, and it's just sort of a little, what is the word? Just a little quick act. It's more interesting to see the open melon. That kind of relaxes in my opinion, the painting a bit, and it makes you think he's back there, and he and his friend have just finished off a pretty good melon.
Yes.
And then just put that other one back there, just carelessly put it back there. I'm sure he, with great decision, he decided how to do it. And then the cucumber is just ready for the cook to take and slice.
Those observations are so key, because in each of those things that you mentioned, there is a human activity. There is human presence, one that we cannot see. But that connects us as viewers to the scene, and in fact, we are active participants in the scene.
Like a kitchen window.
Yes, exactly. And this is something that, of course, Velázquez later plays on when he involves the viewer. When you stand in front of Las Meninas at the Prado in Madrid, you are standing in the very spot that the king and queen should be standing, because they're reflected in the mirror in the background of that painting. Velázquez and Sánchez-Cotán are playing off of that same breakdown of space that involves the viewer very actively in the composition.
There's one other thing I heard, I don't know where I heard it, that the fruit was hung, or the vegetables and things were hung to protect them from insects.
Well,
That was a practical thing that in fact was done.
and to protect them from bruising, because if you leave a quince for too long, or a peach or something, or any kind of fruit, it'll start to it'll go bad on the bottom. I will mention, however, quince is a very specific fruit to Spain. It's used in Spanish cooking, but it's not something that you could just grab and eat. It needs to be cooked. And it's got this kind of ruby red color when it's cooked, and it's used in jams and jellies in particular in Spain.
Even though it's a quince and a cabbage could make I just see, I'm in my kitchen window, I've the board, I'm ready to start making a salad. Although it's not quite correct. And
Yeah.
I might grab a slice of that melon.
Of course, I would encourage it. And in fact, we commissioned last year. We commissioned a touchable installation of this Sánchez-Cotán downstairs in our welcome gallery, which is an education space, and encourages children and visitors with impaired sight to touch aspects of this. It's a three-dimensional panel that actually responds to viewers' touch, and it explains different aspects of the painting. I encourage you all to have a look at that, because it's just gone up in the Welcome Gallery within the last few weeks. And I know you had a question in the back.
As I moved across here, as I'm saying here, the quince and the cabbage are outside. But as I get to the other side, they've receded behind, and it seems like he's playing in our minds.
That's a key point, and I think that Sánchez-Cotán, along with Francisco Pacheco, they represent not just the artistic pinnacle of Spain at this time, but also intellectually, they were among the leading thinkers of their day. And this is why people like the Archbishop of Toledo and other patrons were in this circle of great thinkers and great artists. And of course, Velázquez emerges from this circle as well. So I like to say that these paintings in our gallery, they were not created in a vacuum. Everything is related. It's just a matter of connecting the dots. Yes, go ahead.
Is there a reason, or what is the reason, why the black background is solid black? There is light coming in and there's no illumination on that. If it's a back wall or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it strikes me as odd. It's like deliberately sort of a void.
Yes, it is.
I don't know why.
I've always read this as not being a back wall, which I think would have more of a gray texture, or a textured gray. I see this as being a cellar, and it's so dark in the back that we just cannot penetrate. But it's arresting to the viewer, and it's a visual device used by the artist to highlight the play of light and to focus our attention on these 4 objects that, five if you include
Right.
the second part of the melon. But it focuses our attention, our visual and mental capacity on this array of objects. Yes, go ahead.
It's cool.
The cellar is cool. Yeah, it's a store. It would be a good storage space. Yes.
I wonder if you could speak to the use of color. I mean, it's muted, and yet, the light illuminates in an interesting way, but there isn't an apple.
There isn't an apple. No, that's right.
And the cabbage is that color green as opposed to a purple cabbage or
Right.
pear.
This is, I think, very deliberate on the part of the artists to maintain a limited palette, again, to focus the viewer. And there are other still life paintings by Sanchez Cotan that include great color. There's they're in the case of the hanging fruit and vegetable. They're in Granada. There's a great example where there's a bird hanging from twine, and there's a rich palette there. And although those paintings are great paintings in and of their own way, none really rivals the apparent simplicity of this composition. It is an artist at the height of his power, and I think that's why this painting has become so iconic. But it is a palette that's designed to really emphasize the naturalistic approach of the painter. So keeping the palette limited is very successful. Yes, go ahead.
Here we have a frame on the top, so it sort of gives it that feeling of closure on the top. But if you took the frame off, is the canvas just was painted all the way?
We see all the way to the top of the canvas here, so there isn't anything obscured by the frame. So
It just gives it a feeling of closure.
yes, and I would say that the artist probably didn't intend to even imply a top of this space, because he clearly is leaving it up to our imagination as to where these 2 pieces of twine are anchored. So,
How do you hang a cabbage? I've been asked that before.
well, what you can do is just put a hook into at the end of the twine and hang it on a hook.
And it
That's how
doesn't pull through.
No. Yeah, because this, you see, the part of the cabbage that it's attached to is really that, heavy, strong stalk part of the cabbage. No. Yes, go ahead.
I noticed that he signed it under the melon. It's been signed.
Yes, this is his original signature, and his. If you all, well, I'll invite you to come up towards the end of this, but you can read Juan Sanchez Cotan and the Latin initials for facit, which is typically I made it. But it's the signature is prominent, and it is in the original paint layer. So, yes.
We have another work by him, and I was wondering if there's anything in his work, in his other paintings, that prepares us for this completely new, innovative way of painting. That seems so traditional.
Well, yes, he also did a number of religious commissions, and those paintings are as one would expect. They follow the guidelines of tradition at the time. The reason that this particular still life has become so well known and was so admired even in his own day is because it really was a departure. The still life painting is brand new at this time. I should mention that still life painting had been a tradition in the Greek and Roman times, and there's much writing about ancient Greek still life painting, but it essentially disappeared after the Roman period until the end of the 16th century in Italy. And this is really a departure in Spain. And this painting and others produced by Sanchez Cotan spawn an army of imitators, some very, very good, but still life painting became an essential tradition in the 17th century throughout Spain.
Did he paint any more of those after he entered the monastery?
Any other still life paintings? I think that he did continue to paint still life paintings, but his career, once he's in the monastery, gets a little bit cloudier, I would say. This particular painting is so well documented, it's highly unusual that we have this kind of documentation. We know that the artist, before he left for the monastery, inventoried everything in his studio, and this, in 1603, was in his studio. He describes the painting and its dimensions very clearly. And then, shortly after that, it shows up in the Archbishop's collection. But once he's in the monastery, we know that he continues painting. We just don't know how much or really for whom.
Yeah, it seems to me it's really cutting edge at that time and a breakthrough because he combined formality, which was called for in those days, I imagine, with some whimsy. Just made it alive. Another thing I noticed, when I look up on the left side, talking about the perspective, but when my eye travels up, the darker gray and the lighter gray look flat. They don't look like they have the perspective until I get back down here, but if I look at the half and all the way up.
From here up?
It just looks like two lines of color. Until I get back down here, then I'm convinced it's perspective.
These are also very valuable observations because the flatness, the quality of flatness, and also the quality of abstraction even are themes that run throughout Spanish painting, and hopefully we can return to discussion of that at another art stop.
Yes, good.
So,
maybe got a couple.
yeah. So, well, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.